in general, you probably don't want to annoy your customers, particularly when their other shipments was broken, but regardless.
Well, if you got $1, won't just lousy down. Know that I got rhythm that could suit your budget fine.
Hi, this is Patrick with Trusty Huckster Mercantile. Welcome back. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome to you too. Trusty Huckster Mercantile is a vintage reseller. We specialize in porcelain, glass, pottery, basically decorative objects, all of vintage origin. I have a shop that I run on Etsy that you can find by following THMercantile, abbreviation for Trusty Huckster Mercantile. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram under that same abbreviation. I've been posting a series of videos, some multiple topics, all based on the fact that I'm locked in my house, along with most of the country. Although not like most of the country, I'm still locked in my house through May. Illinois has a stay-at-home order that will continue through at least the end of May. So I've been mixing things up. What I started is what inadvertently has become a series of unboxing videos. Partially it's because I keep buying things while I'm stuck in the house. I need to entertain myself somehow. So I have a lot of material coming in. It turned out that looking to see how other sellers package their materials was helping me package mine, and I decided to try and share that. As we go into this video, I wanted to make something very clear. Nothing is staged. What you are seeing is a purchase that I made on an individual platform, which I typically will share in the video. At the beginning of the video, I do not indicate who this package has come from. Now, full disclosure, I have already opened the package that you're about to see. So I know what happens. I'm omniscient. No, I just recorded it in a different order. So I do know what's going to happen, but it was not planned, it was not staged. The seller does not know that I'm about to do it, and depending on the results, the seller may or may not find out what I've done. This video, it was worth kind of highlighting that because what happened isn't anything I had expected. So with no further ado, I encourage you to watch this video. Stick around to the end. If you like what you see, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, I would appreciate you considering subscribing. Thanks so much for your time and enjoy the unboxing. So this is the shipment. It was sent in 2 boxes. One of them weighs 10 pounds. And this one weighs 9. Okay, well, interesting. So I don't know which is in which, but because there were 2 orders, I'm making the assumption that one order was all in one box and one order is in the other box. Because I got the bonus to the butter dish, I'm not sure which one that went into. So let's open them and see. Got the cutter. Right. One of the things that I find interesting is that this is taped with duct tape. Literally the first shipment I ever sent for Etsy, I used the tape that I had available, and it was duct tape, and the US Postal Service would refuse to accept it because they won't allow that to go through their mailing service. It's evidently too sticky, so that if it comes off, it messes up their systems or something like that. So I had to actually either cover it with regular packing tape or take it all off and then retape it up. So anyway, so this did not go through USPS. It came through FedEx home delivery solution. So FedEx evidently does not have the duct tape rule. So we're gonna pop that open. And so at the top, looks like we've got an extra piece of cardboard to give a little extra protection. So it's kind of a nice touch because we know that what's in here is all glass. So that just gave a little bit of extra. Now I will say it somehow maybe settled a little bit in shipment. There's probably maybe an inch and a half of space between the top of this and the top of the box. So when this was sealed up, the box actually has some give. So it might have been a better move to put a little bit extra, maybe an extra inch layer of these packing peanuts so that things would not have shifted around. But in general, I forgot to look at the review when I started the review. The box does seem to be in pretty good condition. Because it's not completely stuffed solid, it has had the problem that the edge has slightly caved in, not from damage, but just, from being picked up or whatever. If you have give in the box will typically take it. So it's doing way more give now because it's not sealed. So I don't want to give the wrong impression. I didn't have any reason to believe it was an issue, but there is, you know, it's more obvious now that it's open that there is extra room, and you want to try and fill as much void space as you can, simply so that as things get moved around or if they happen to get dropped, there's no place for them to move. Things are going to get broken when they move, typically moving into a very hard object that they shouldn't. All right, so I'm going to end up making a mess. It is what it is. If it's packed well, the mess will be worth it. All right, so pretty much you've got, I would say, maybe an inch or 2 inch layer of the packing peanuts, and then that extra cardboard before you got the first surface on the top. So I'm going to pull this out. Now I am going to say that it was also packed, as this came up, what was exposed at the beginning was just the very top, so it looked like this was nestled very well, but this is the bowl set, and so it's bigger. So as I'm pulling it out, I realized that the edge of this bowl was very close to the edge of the box, and this happens to be the side of the box that had been pushed in a little bit. So that's just always something to take into consideration when you're packing. It's not, is the box, can it fit in the box? It's can it fit into the box with proper padding around it? I think the minimum rule of thumb is supposed to be an inch extra on each side. So if you have a 12-inch wide object, you need a 14-inch box. Some people, I believe, Scott at the Old Curiosity Shop, his recommendation I think is 2 inches on each side. I try and abide by that when I can, but I will admit in some cases it depends on what it is. In a bowl, I probably would give the 2 inches because not all objects are the same. A bowl or any object that's hollow at some point in the middle, if it starts taking a flex, there's no place to release that flex and it will crack. Where if it's a solid, you know, I don't know, a solid, like an ashtray, it's not going to have as many areas to flex, so it's probably going to, you know, it would probably survive with less padding on either side. And the bigger the box, the more it costs to ship. So it's all a balancing act. So anyway, as I pulled this out, I will just say that this I feel was a little bit too close to the edge, but I have a feeling there's other bowls on the other side, so it became a packing necessity. So we've got this one, it has come out. From feeling it, it feels good. It still feels like it's a bowl, so that means it's in one piece. That's a good sign. So that's there. I am going to go ahead and pull the other piece out because I don't want to try and open this while I have this pile of peanuts being built. So there's another piece that was a little bit farther down, so definitely had 2 or 3 inches of peanuts on the top. It's also pretty close to the edge, but it's at least an inch because this was nestled right in there. So there was at least one piece, plus there's the padding on here. So this is probably getting into like 1.5 inches away from the edge. It also was several inches from the bottom. So this was pretty well protected on all sides. I'm going to guess that this is the butter dish. Based on the rectangular shape, I don't think it's one of the bowls. Then on the back side, picking another piece. Feels like there was only one thin layer of peanuts at the very, very bottom that then this was sitting on, and it was sitting on the rim. Nope, something didn't survive. I should not be hearing that sound. Okay, well, we have excitement. Notice my utter lack of excitement in my voice. I was really excited to get these bowls. Anyway, so it was it had padding to the bottom. It had a little bit of padding on the sides, enough that I wouldn't have thought it was a problem. But once again, you've got to have places for things to take absorb the impacts. This didn't work. So we'll open that with more detail once I clear this area. Now, before I do that, let me just check to make sure nothing else is in here. Oh, wait, there is more in here. Oh, okay. This is the underplate to the butter dish. I assumed it was all in the one package, so that's actually a good thing. I can already tell when I go to open this other bowl that part of the problem is one bowl was nestled into the other one. And if you watched an earlier video, I commented on that. So it's good that this is actually packaged by itself. And this is actually a pretty good example. This could probably go a little bit closer to the edge, because unless you did something that provided so much torsion that it somehow crushed it from corner to corner, which if it does that, no amount of packing is going to save it. This is going to take some pretty decent impact before it does any sort of damage, because there's nothing that it really needs to work against. I'd say I can tell that it's ribbed like up, so like it's cupped, because this is the side that the top of the butter dish would go on. So this is typically the bottom. You put that against a thin layer of peanuts, and you're gonna have some really good cushioning, because this is the strongest point. I wouldn't flip it to the other side, because this is the curved area. Suddenly, if it's not being pushed 100% flat, you are creating some sort of a tension against those ridges and that raised area that could snap it off. So that was packed separately. Very good job on that one. So it looks like I've got a survived butter dish. Okay, so now we're gonna open the second box. This one, based on the experience of the first one, seems to be in pretty good order. There's a little bit of flexing here on the side, but minimal. Again, it could have been padded a little bit better, but depending on how it's packaged inside, it may not have been necessary. There is a school of thought that sides should be bulging in order for it to be properly packaged. I don't know if you have to necessarily go that far, but if that's what provides you the padding, then it could be considered. So with this opened up, it's very similar to what we had in the other one. There is a top layer of cardboard. This one appears to have had more settling. There's probably about 2 inches of distance between the cardboard and the top of the box. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with packing peanuts, but it would be my assumption that what probably happened, if you think about this, was filled at a packing facility. I know that, she mentioned that. So they probably had one of those big bags with the opening at the bottom of the bag that you just open it up and it falls and fills this. So when it filled it, they topped it off with this cardboard based on how much fill was in there out of necessity. And then over time and shipping, all of these peanuts kind of shifted and settled and kind of nestled into one another. And you can see, if it starts out, this style of peanut, if it starts out where these happen to be sitting exactly opposite of each other, there's, maybe 1.5 inches of padding. But if it shifts just a little bit, the one piece slides into the other and you lose about 1/4 inch of padding. So it is what it is, and you figure this one might do that, but the other one will be back to back, so it'll average itself out. But in this case, this is quite a bit of shifting to still have 2 inches of material from the top, that if this were to ever be tipped the opposite way, all of this stuff would shift 2 inches, and that allows the peanuts to slide out from underneath whatever they were supposed to be protecting, and things could shift toward the edge. So now that it's opened, you can see this piece was just underneath the cardboard. I did shift it a little bit, so there might have been a little bit of coverage, but it is angled up slightly. I don't know if the camera can tell it. I don't want to tilt it and spill all the peanuts over. Where this one is set just enough farther down that there's peanuts sitting on top of it. So this one is better protected than this one. But what I find interesting is I can tell just from this the topward glance down, these are touching. So there's no padding in between the two. Let's see if I can get that. So they did not pay attention when they were doing the fill to put anything that rubbed to get in between these two. And they both have hard edges. These are the refrigerator boxes. I can't tell if that's the box or the lid. I mean, and they're individually, they're still wrapped. So they were padded. It's not like they put glass against glass, but you did seem to have quite a bit of space here. And all of this is shifted to one side. Again, I'll try and tilt without spilling it out. But there's that much space between the edge of this one and the box This one has the width of a packing peanut distance between it and this edge of the box. Side to side, you probably got about 3 inches. So there seemed to be more space than they were utilizing. Again, things could have shifted. You know, they may have had a little bit of peanuts in there, and then because of it moved around, everything just started falling toward the middle. Not necessarily a bad thing because they are individually wrapped, but that's, again, something you need to consider when shipping, is things will not necessarily arrive the exact way you packed them. So you need to make sure that's protected, not just for the way it looks the minute you seal the box, but the way it's going to look when that box starts shifting around. So this is the rectangular refrigerator box. And I will be honest, this is the one that I wanted the most, and this is the one I was most concerned about getting damaged, because they're very well made, and I already have a set of the other sizes. This size I did not have, which is why I wanted it. The walls are they're not made of stone, they're glass. They're thick, but they're not super thick. And so, again, when we start talking about pressure being put on the boxes, if anything were to put too much pressure from side to side, this is hollow in the top. There's the glass in the bottom, but it's hollow in the top. If you get too much pressure, it'll continue to compress until they crack. So at this point, this one feels like it's in pretty good condition. You know, we'll see what happens when you open it up. But this one, the way it was packed, you know, did shift a little bit to the middle, but that one's in good condition. This one, that was the one that was rubbing up against it, is the square Fridgey Box. And now this one does have a really nice extra layer of padding. Now this is also interesting. It has a nice extra layer of padding where this was rolled very nicely along these edges. But I don't know if you can tell here, there's only one layer of bubble wrap here. And only one layer, maybe 2 layers of bubble wrap here. There's probably 4 here. Overall, it's still packaged pretty well, but it's not packaged uniformly. So it's something to keep in mind as you're wrapping things, what edges are going to be exposed, which are more susceptible. Now, they put a little bit of an extra layer of padding here at the top, which, based on the way it seems to be flaring, I think this is how the dish would sit. So this is the open part. So they did put a little bit more padding at the very top, because again, if this was the part that if it gets crushed, that's what would snap. So they did put a little bit of extra padding so that if this did start getting pressure, all of the air pockets would pop first, and then the glass would go. So you need those extra layers. One layer of this, I'm not going to say inexpensive, because bubble wrap does add up. There's probably a good 50 cents worth of bubble wrap just on this one piece. So it does cost money to do this, but these are not going to give you the super duper protection. It helps, but you need to pay attention. So this way, it would have been fairly safe because there's this extra layer this way. But back to these two sides that are not as well covered, if these two got compressed, this one has a little bit of overlap here, so there's a little bit of extra padding to give that one. This one does not. So this is just maybe that 2 layers of bubble wrap that's folded over, and it's just less opportunity to forgive. Now, it seems like this one survived. So again, hindsight's 20/20. Yeah, it's fine. What are you complaining about? It's all about learning what can go wrong and then determining what's realistic to prevent it. You know, if you wanted to try and save every single piece, and if you've got super valuable pieces, you want to consider this. This could have gone into its own box, packaged like this with its own peanuts, and then that could go in its own box, and the other piece could go in its own box, and then all of those boxes could be packaged together into a bigger box, and that would then, you can do that to the point still if a truck drove over it, still wouldn't save it, but it's practical. But the cost to do that would probably exceed the cost of the bowls or of the dishes. So it's all about being practical. And that's what I'm hoping these videos will show, is just how do other people overcome this. And this is a really good approach. Could be slightly better, but it worked. So I'm not going to complain. So then just underneath where I did just pull some of these off. So these were covered. This is the lid to the square dish. Again, seems fairly nicely padded. There's something else underneath here, whether it's a piece of, maybe it's just another piece of bubble wrap, although it looks more white, so maybe there's a piece of foam under there. This one, when you start doing square items, you need to be sensitive to what happens at the corners. This one is done well, because I do think there's another layer in there. But sometimes if you bring over the edges, depending on what the shape is and how big the piece of bubble wrap is that you have, these corners can actually end up getting exposed. And what's the most dangerous part of getting damaged during shipment? It's the corners. So if you're going to do anything with extra bubble wrap, or if you're trying to conserve on your packaging, do the corners extra and then wrap it all together, and you're protecting the most vulnerable part of the shipment. So this one appears to be good. All right, so then kind of going down. All right, so then near the edge, but definitely with about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of distance, is the rectangular lid. And what's nice about this, I'm pulling it out the way it's set because I can feel it. The way it's set is exactly what I talked about earlier with the butter dish. This is the flat, which technically is the top. What's facing me is the ridges that would fit into when it goes onto the dish. It was packed in such a way that this is what was on the outside of toward the outside of the box, because the inside is where the little lip is that has to fit within the box. It's not big, but again, that's going to be one of the more susceptible areas that if it were to get anything or bump into it, it's far more likely that one of those would chip or snap or crack, because there's far less surface area than the entire base here. So this was packed actually really well and still had some good packaging behind it. So you still had about 2 inches away from the wall. All right, now we get to the mother piece. Oh, wait, well, it's kind of the mother piece. As we're pulling it off, you can see there was a lot of material covering it up. We get to the lid first. So this is the largest size. I actually have one of these and I don't care for it very much because it's so large, it's very heavy. And the lid does not fit particularly well. It sits on it fine, but it's not even close to being airtight. It serves just to store food. I considered separating this from the order, but to be honest, the price was so good, and even with the shipping included, I figured, you know what, I'll just have an extra one. So this is a superfluous piece, but I paid for it, so I still want it to be in good condition. So this one, interestingly, does not have bubble wrap at all. So this one has done, it looks like this is a bag of some sort of a foam sleeve, because you can see it's sealed here on the edges. So they slid the lid into it, folded it over, and taped it down. So again, this edge had some pretty good protection. The rest of it is just protected by the foam, but this is almost by definition was in the smack middle of the box. So it seems totally relevant, totally sufficient to be able to do something like that for something that was going to be buried and protected by everything else that was already wrapped. All right, so then so the peanuts that were sitting on top of that have now laid on here. So it looks like the bottom piece is buried significantly, but I'm digging down. Wow, I'm digging pretty far down. From where my thumb is, that's how much, from the top of my fingertips to my thumb, that's how much space there is between the bowl or the dish that I'm about to pull out and the bottom of the box. So, you know, good 3-4 inches of fill was put at the bottom before the bowl was put into it. All right, well, it's not rattling, so that's a good sign. Again, it seems to have been wrapped similarly to the smaller one. I can feel a little bit extra padding, like right at the edges, so along the rims. These two seem to be better padded than these two. So again, actually this one's pretty good too. It's just this one doesn't seem to have as much on it. So it must be the way that they, folded the bubble wrap together. So again, it survived. It was in really good condition. I would wonder if this should have been packed the other way around. As I pulled it out, what it meant was that the bottom, well, okay, this sounds gonna sound confusing. this is the way the dish will be used in real life. So this is the top, this is the open part. This open part was facing the bottom of the box. There was a lot of fill, but I'm wondering if it might have been better to pack it this way, because then you had a very solid bottom facing the bottom of the box. And then this, worse, you know, you could have even packed the, you know, a dish, you know, right in the middle of it, like the other lid, because now if this were to ever have too much pressure, this lid sinking into the cushioning within the center, it's not even touching this other box. So there are some benefits you can do when you don't want things to necessarily nestle into each other, as we learned from the bowls and some of the other shipments I've had. But in this case, this isn't nestling into the other. These are both packaged individually beautifully. But then if you stack them in such a way, this would have actually given a lot more protection. But again, it's perfect. Well, I hope it's perfect. It seems perfect. So we're at a good start. Everything was packaged in this one pretty well. And at least nothing's rattling. So let's go from here. Okay, so we will start unpacking the fridge boxes now. Again, kind of covered how they were wrapped as they were coming out. They're all in really good condition. They're all taped, you know, fairly nicely. They are using packaging tape, but it is a small piece of packaging tape as opposed to being wrapped all the way around. So I don't need a box cutter. So that came off easily enough, and then a small piece that's attached to this as well. Because it was taped, I wasn't going to be able to slide it out, because this did just become the wrap. And so as I mentioned before, this ends up being a case where, because this wrap came around, some of it got an even higher level of wrap, where this one also got a piece of wrap, but it meant some of the sides got 4 layers of covering. So it's, in some cases, it's just physics. You can only do so much with how you're actually wrapping. But this was done in each case. It looks like the layer was, actually triple folded. So they took the regular width of bubble wrap, triple folded it, which was really convenient to the size of this dish. As a 4x4 dish. So a 12-inch piece of bubble wrap done into thirds, you know, did a nice job. And then this piece has that same type of triple action. Also a relatively small piece of bubble wrap. It is damaging. Packing tape is so strong that it does damage the bubble wrap when you take it off. So in the interest of reusing it, it'll be okay for me to use it maybe for storage. It would not be usable for something that I'm shipping out to one of my customers. I would want it to be in better shape, but it is what it is, and it was well packaged. So those, again, another triple piece from that side. And then this one, okay, so interestingly enough, this piece didn't make it all the way around. So it looks like they just cut a 12-inch by 12-inch square. Most likely it's pre-perforated, or maybe it's just cut, I can't tell. So it didn't make it all the way around, so they ended up having to do the packaging tape directly onto the item, which, because this is clear glass, is absolutely not an issue. So one of the reasons I like the Hazel Atlas clear glass is because I can put it in the dishwasher. I do put it in the dishwasher, and there's really no issue. It's top shelf, you know, so it's not too close to the heater. But if this had some sort of a finish on it, this tape would possibly take that off. But I'm sure they wouldn't have taped onto it if there was some sort of a finish. So they did put some packing peanuts in there, so it gave it a little bit of cushion. Had there been any pressure put on either side, I'm not sure it would have done that much good. But you know, it's a nice gesture, and it looks like it's in pristine condition. Now the lid, come on. In general, you probably don't want to annoy your customers, particularly when one of their other shipments was broken, but regardless. Interestingly enough, on this one, because packing peanuts wouldn't fit, they actually cut a piece of bubble wrap, or folded up a piece of bubble wrap to fit into the lid. Again, not 100% sure the value of it, because if you can tell, the bubble wrap actually still sits into the lip. So in some cases, what I've done when I package up, I might take a couple layers. This is not folded nicely anymore, but because this is a nice size, so that it actually sticks above it and then wrap it, it's not as much of a flat piece at that point, but it then is providing the protection that if anything were to then sit or slide or bump against this, you have this little extra piece of bubble wrap that literally is just helping stick it up across the other bubble wrap that's all the way around it. So it just protects the edges. So it's a nice gesture that they did it, but I'm not sure how practical or useful that extra piece is, but it shows that their heart was in the right spot. Lid looks like it's in great shape, just as it was photographed. Do the same thing for the middle of the dish. All right, same thing. They had taped onto the glass itself, but that comes off easily enough. Tape residue will easily wash off of something that's like this. They put the peanuts in there, a nice gesture. I have more than enough peanuts now. So this one they did a little bit differently. They did still fold the bubble wrap for the layer. They didn't fold it quite as small. I think this is still 4 inches if I remember correctly, but it's a little bit wider so that it does kind of sit over the lip, but more importantly, it does wrap all the way around the edge. So this lip and this lip is definitely getting some protection. These two, again, these are like the sides that would sit into the dish to keep it from rattling. Probably didn't get as much protection, but it was very, very well wrapped. Beyond that, so again, nice gesture, but if this were to truly do its purpose, another layer that would puff this up and go a little bit over on the edges so it wasn't quite as folded, as small, would have done a nicer job. But at the end of the day, it's a beautiful piece, exactly what I wanted, and this was the missing piece to my collection, so I'm ecstatic to have it. Perfect. Moving on to the large piece. And big piece survived. There's a little bit of a flea bite here on the corner, but I don't think that was in packing. I think that may have just been undescribed when it was sold. I'm not happy about it because I think something like that should always be declared, but it is extremely small. It is a flea bite. I recognize that. Some people will overlook them more than I will. But again, this was a piece that I didn't particularly care about. So it'll go back in the back. It's in a place that it's not an issue because I do use these. It's not just for my visual pleasure. It's not in a place where it would be impacted by food or anything like that. It's not going to necessarily make it worse. So that is not damage that was done during shipping. So this was a good ship. And then I'm curious about this one because it was the only one packaged like this. It just had the 2 little pieces of packing tape, which because of this, I'm not sure what this material is. I've seen it before. It's just, polystyrene. I have no idea what kind of bag this is. It's got a little bit of padding to it. It's not particularly thick. This is less than, this is only a couple millimeters thick. But again, it looks like it's a bag of some sort. And then when you take out the lid, okay, so the lid itself was then also bubble wrapped to go into the bag. Very nice condition. So that is the Criss Cross refrigerator dishes. So I'm going to start with what was effectively my bonus buy. This was the butter dish that I had wanted to purchase along with all the other pieces, but because of Mikari's purchasing platform, it was impossible for her to combine shipments to save freight. So what she did was include this quote unquote for free after I purchased the other 2 sets. So this was not really a bonus, but it was basically my discount for the fact that the other 2 pieces were being shipped. Now in hindsight, because they ended up being shipped in separate boxes, there really was no discount for combined freight because they weren't actually combined. It basically ended up being a thank you gift to me from her simply for buying so many pieces at one time. You can tell on Mercari how long something has been posted, and these had been available for sale for quite some time. So anyway, regardless, this is how I got it, and it looks like this is one of the pieces that survived, so I'll start with this. The lid appears to have been multiple wrapped with one big piece, and then another sleeve made to go around the other, and it is in pristine condition. Again, with it being so flat, there were a few things other than a seriously smashed box that probably would have impacted this. So this was very nicely packed in multiple layers. So similar to the bowls, this was taped to the glass, which is not a problem. Also filled with popcorn. The piece itself appears to be in perfect shape. So I've got a wonderful butter dish. We'll go to the one that seems like it might be good. I don't want to cut all the way down to the bottom because I am curious how these are wrapped, because there's two here and there are two here. So there is a piece of bubble wrap here that appears to specifically have been put in place to protect the rim. So that's a really good move. It was folded in thirds and then wrapped around the edge. Now I can feel through this, I can still feel the edge of the rim. So although it's a nice gesture, this is extremely thin bubble wrap. Even folding it into thirds is actually not giving it all that much protection. It probably would have been better to then fold it in half again. So I would have had 6 layers of protection and have it just around that rim piece. So it's a nice gesture, just maybe not sufficient because we know what happened here. Okay, I finally reached glass to the outer bowl. There's a nice piece of bubble wrap taped, again, folded into thirds, taped to go all the way around the base up to the edge of the rim. The thing to consider is, though, it didn't technically cover the rim. It was taped like right to it, but it might have been better to fold a piece under here and then wrap it over or something like that. This did not give all that much protection to the rim. It's primarily giving protection to the bottom, but this piece could have been better used if it had been tripled in effect and just used to cover this base. The base is fairly sturdy, but it does have edges. So you could have just used the same amount of bubble wrap to protect here, because stretching it up the side and into the lip really wasn't providing that much extra protection. But as you get this outer layer off, tape. So on this side, it didn't even go all the way up to the rim. It was actually taped halfway up. So it really was just protecting the bottom. So it would have been better to fold this again into thirds and used a very thick square to protect the bottom. But again, nice gesture. So that seems to be all the protection for the outer bowl. And the outer bowl appears to be in pretty good shape. I paused there for a second because I thought that was a crack, but that's actually the remnants of the packing tape that I peeled off. So then the other bowl is nestled inside. So again, this is the Hazel Atlas Criss Cross pattern for the mixing bowls. This is the largest size. I did not have the mixing bowls at all, so this was a fun addition. So now this was nestled inside. So it had one piece of bubble wrap that laid inside the bowl, and then this set inside of it. And then this itself is also wrapped. Now I want to talk about this in case you didn't see an earlier video where I talked about the perils, potential perils. Again, everything's about a balance, but the potential perils of packaging things that are packed together. Even though these are designed to nest together, you're running the risk of what happens if there is some pressure put onto any of these pieces. Now I will say in general, this is done fairly well because this inner bowl fits very nicely into this outer bowl. It's almost flush to the surface, so if any foreign pressure or anything were to jostle this around, this is actually fairly safe because, or at least, I'm sorry, let me clarify, the top is fairly safe because there's really nothing exposed. What is at risk, and it's really going to be hard you'll see it better when I unwrap it. But this, well, you can see it in this one. These bowls have a lip. And so what's happening is as this is sitting into here, although it's sitting relatively flush, there's a lip here also. And so this lip is dangerously close to being rocked in around this bowl, that if there were any pressure, you're at risk of snapping the inner lip because there's no place else for that pressure to go. I've received multiple pieces, and I covered this in an earlier video, where pieces that in any normal daily use would absolutely be nestled together, but in shipping causes a problem. I've lost a tea canister because the lid was nestled into it. Well, the lid's designed to go onto it, so you'd think that'd be fine, but if that box, which it did, got dropped and the box itself was damaged, when that lid got pushed, it had no place to go except through the wall of the pottery tea canister. I lost 2 tea canisters that way. One of them I was able to somewhat salvage. I still got a refund from the seller, but I have one until I can replace it. It damaged the rim where the lid sits, so I was able to kind of fix it. It's cracked, but luckily it's on the back, so it's fine. It's actually in my tea canister collection if you saw that in my bunker video. But the other one was shattered. The lid is still perfectly fine. I actually had the lid for sale on my Instagram page for a while. But the same way, when it was settled in there, when it got some pressure put onto it, when it went through the edge, it didn't just snap off or crack off a couple pieces from the edge. It shattered the entire canister. It looked like someone had thrown it against the wall and then put the pieces in the box. How the other canister that was shipped with it and how the lid was able to survive it, no idea. It's all just about the pressure. You know, flash back to your physics classes. You know, at some point, for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. If you put force onto something, that force has to transfer somewhere. If you have enough bubble wrap, the force will transfer into the bubble wrap, and the bubble wrap will take all of that pressure until it can't handle it anymore, and it passes it on to something else. So that was just a long-winded way of saying, although this pair appears to have survived, it's a dangerous way to ship, but it's practical. If you had individually wrapped all 4 of these pieces and then tried to get them in the box, would have been massive, and the shipping cost would have been more than what the bowls themselves are worth. So it was a calculated risk. We'll see. Again, this feels like it's fine, and it is. So even though it was maybe precariously close to the edge because it's set in far enough, it was protected. They did put a little extra padding into the middle. That, again, had there been some pressure, this might have given a little bit extra support, but probably not that much. It's just, I think in this case, this serves as a nice appearance of additional packaging, but I don't see that this particularly benefited from having this in here. But it's one of the few pieces of bubble wrap I'm getting out of this shipment that I'll be able to reuse, so yay. I thought I had a pair of gloves, work gloves. I cannot find them, so I'm just gonna do this carefully. If you want to yell at me in the comments, feel free, but I am aware of what I'm doing, and I know it's already broken, so we shall see. I think my gloves are in my Goodwill bag, which I don't know where that is right now because I haven't been to a Goodwill bins in ages. So anyway, so let me try and open this up. Okay, this may obstruct your view a little bit, but I'm afraid that once I cut this open, the glass is going to start falling loose, and I'm doing this at my dining room table. So for my own safety, even though I'm doing this so I won't cut my hands, I don't want the glass, particularly if they're little tiny shards, to run loose across my dining room table. So I'll do the best I can to make sure you can still see what I'm doing, but that's why I'm doing it. So this also has the piece that was plied around the bottom to protect the bottom. Now, this is interesting. This one is actually on the outside of all the packaging, where the other one was on the inside. Not sure it particularly matters, but that was a little different. All right, this one may be in one piece. I'm gonna deal with that later because this has gotten a little scary. Okay, I'm glad I grabbed the box because this didn't do a clean break. So little pieces are falling into the box. So I'm going to try and hold everything over this box because to a certain extent, it's also interesting in the way vintage glassware breaks, you know, how it was made. So clearly this just became shattered around where the rim would have gone all the way around. So you've got big chunks, which are obviously down here. You then have a crack which formed, which would have, if continued, would have continued to go through. It doesn't follow, and I'm not necessarily sure that it would or has a difference. It doesn't follow any of the mold lines, which to what I remember of physics, I would have thought that those might have been areas that would have been more susceptible. So I actually find it interesting that either this was broken with such sudden force that it didn't have a chance to follow the path of least resistance. But that is a weapon. I mean, that's serious. So there's one large piece that appears to be the one that fits, that would fit here. I don't want to pick it up because the edges are still broken off of it. And then this piece is in absolute shards. Again, I'm just not going to pick it up. So anyway, unhappy mail. So going back to what would be the smallest one. All right, this was a survivor. So that is my glassware story. 19 pounds of glass resulted in maybe 17 pounds of useful glass. It's not something I hold the seller accountable for. It's unfortunate. She did pay someone to pack it for her, and I'm hoping that there'll be some level of insurance. In my opinion, it all kind of balances itself out because the original interpretation of getting the butter dish for free was because it was going to be what she would have saved on shipping by combining shipping. But the fact that she actually technically never combined the shipping, they were still two separate shipments, I don't think she saved anything. So again, it was a nice gesture, but I am perfectly content trading the butter dish for the broken dish. So I'm not even gonna ask for a refund. I'm not gonna name her. I don't think that's fair. It's unfortunate that this was my first purchase through Mercari. So I'm actually equally curious to see what kind of customer service I get as a result of this. And if there's some way that she can provide me compensation without hurting herself, I will take it. But she's a reseller just like me. And some people say it's because I'm a Libra, but I'm all about balance. And I feel that getting this piece was a fair addition to my collection. It would have been even better if the 4 bowls had survived. But I'm not going to worry about that. It's a lesson learned, and hopefully it'll be a lesson learned for her as well. And I'll give her a link to the video, and she will feel free to share it if she wants to, but I'm not going to name her here. So I appreciate you joining me. If you've gotten this far into the video and you have not already subscribed, hopefully you will consider subscribing. It does help my motivation to provide different levels of content. Although this started out potentially being just another unboxing video, this one got pretty interesting even for me. So I really want to hear what other people have to say, and I appreciate your comments. Like the video, share it with your friends, comment below, whatever the case may be. Appreciate you being here, appreciate you giving me your time, and I hope you join me again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Sure was nice to know you. Oh, maybe I'll catch you on the New York train. Or maybe I'll never see your face again.